Hi, this is Chris from the Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from Political Voices Network.
If you guys can't see me, I got a bottle of ginger beer in my hand, and I am like drunk on Republican tears right now.
Yeah, Malcolm, I got to say it. I feel like these polls, I'm actually glad if it's keeping Democrats scared, because I think we need to stay scared because it seems to work. I think hopefully we learn the lessons of 2016. The minute we get complacent and think, oh, Hillary's going to win by a landslide, we saw what happened, I'm just, wow, election after election after election, there have been just, as we keep saying, polls don't vote, people do, and people in election after election are turning away Republicans. So there's some hope this morning, right?
Plenty. Let's go on with it. One more year, people.
Yeah, no, exactly, and we all know what can happen in a year. Let's talk about, I was just talking about Jake Tapper did a piece. I don't know if you saw it that everybody's talking about, but it echoes, of course, the piece that you wrote about, what's happening in the Middle East. Also, because we just had a tragedy out here that you reference in Thousand Oaks, a 69-year-old Jewish man was killed at a protest, and you said, warning, a week or so ago, I said, be prepared for acts of self-starting terrorism by the more motivated, passionate followers. One, this incident is not what I meant. You were talking about the woman that crashed her car into a building she thought was a Jewish school. You said this is a latent symptom of the future terror group, bomber, or active shooter we have yet to see. They, he, she are forming slowly, a seething fuse to a powder keg of choked down murderous rage. Small attacks like this, beating and killing a man with a megaphone, tearing down posters, or baby steps. Someone soon will do something more lethal, more involved. I predict many pro-Palestinian supporters will quickly deny their ardent recent activism much faster than Peter denied knowing Jesus, and more than 3 times too. Bookmark this tweet. This clearly is getting out of hand everywhere, including here. This is, just a few miles from us, Malcolm. But talk about this tweet in particular.
Well, I'm afraid to say things are getting out of hand. And we know that there's a lot of passion, a lot of emotion going on out there. I just spent an hour on the Joe Madison radio show, right? It was also on Sirius XM. And, people are upset about things that, I'm going to be honest, I'm not quite sure you know what you're upset about. Yeah. Some of these people are spewing off histories that are crazy, insane, and uninformed. I just went into an argument this morning about me being a boomer, right? But guess what? Boomers read. Boomers have history. Boomers have a life experience. I do not get my information off a 30-second TikTok and go, oh, things are unfair. So that tweet, which was the second one where I warned, there's going to be an act of terrorism. And it's going to be some of these more motivated ardent supporters of the Hamas-Palestine issue. It turns out the FBI in Houston, Texas already intercepted one. A guy who was buying semi-automatic weapons, Jordanian-American, who intended to do a massacre at a synagogue. So terrorism is likely going to spring out of this. The Hamas love, and by the way, the people who are supporting Palestine, all right, I'm not saying you support Hamas, but by God, it better come out of your mouth that you don't support Hamas, or you don't support what happened to Israel on 10/7. You can love the people and the poor children who are the victims of these attacks. Hamas planned the death of all of these women and children for over 2 years when they planned to invade Israel. So you're going to have to get real about some things. But my problem is these newly found activists who, by the way, Black Lives Matter and Antifa, I'm going to call it right here on national radio. Those organizations may be finished. They may be finished because the people who are their biggest supporters, their most ardent activists, are coming out and are ripping down posters of children that were kidnapped, attacking people. I know you want to go out and you want to support people of color, but you need to know the difference between terrorism and war. And perhaps it's the first war you've seen because it's the first one shown on TikTok. But by God, this is getting out of hand, and people need to control themselves. And more importantly, I'm going to quote Fran Lebowitz, the famous author again, think before you speak, read before you think.
Yeah. Well, your piece is Hamas needs children to die. The October 7th battle strategy for Hamas was when we kill Jewish babies, they will come to kill Palestinian babies. Either way, we win. And your piece is just Palestinian children are Hamas's secret weapon. And this is what I was saying, that kind of echoes. Jake Tapper just played a bunch of Hamas leaders, which I don't know, Malcolm, if you think that will help sink in. This is Hamas leaders on video in their own words. Talking about this, you did the exact thing you're writing about. This is their strategy. You said in the smoke and dust from a distant TV camera, these strikes may look indiscriminate, but they are quite precise. But only one side of this conflict planned for the deaths of Palestinian civilian population as an integral part of their strategy. That is the terrorist group Hamas. Chris was asking the question on air, is there a way to more surgically do this? But, based on your article and, the CNN piece, that's exceedingly difficult because of the way Hamas structured this whole thing and structured Gaza, right?
Yeah, this is, okay, I want you to imagine Venice Beach. Okay, all those bungalows down in Venice? Yeah. Raise that up to 20-story buildings. That level of density, but 20-story buildings with only little alleys and a few cross streets there and very little beach, right? That is what Gaza is like, 25 miles deep, 4 miles long, with highly dense structures. Hamas built underneath that, and the only way to get at them is in the streets in between. There is no indiscriminate bombing. I've seen indiscriminate bombing. I have planned bombing strikes which didn't have precision munitions on them. Believe me, this ain't it. The Israelis could kill 100,000 people in 72 hours. If you wanted indiscriminate bombing. This is precision bombing. The problem is the enemy planned this for decades, right? The last 2 years, they planned this specific mission to go out, attack Israel, and let the Israelis slaughter everybody above, trying to get the Hamas tunnel system. The Israelis have now done it smart. They blitzed in north and south. They're now dominating the east. They've gone up the coast to the west. And Gaza City is a box. Here's what's going to happen next. There is going to be a humanitarian pause in fighting on the Israeli side. And they are already creating corridors to let whoever's in Gaza City out. But, this is like the Reichstag in the last battle of World War II with the Soviet army. Anyone with a weapon in there is getting killed. The Israelis are already going underground to root these people out. Yeah. The hostages are probably not there. Most of them are probably indisposed. We don't know. But this is a war. And you can't say, I want a ceasefire and just let Hamas stay with where they are and do with what they did. The Gazan people are hostages, and they need to be freed as well.
Yeah, you talked about them spending every cent on this underground fortress beneath these apartments. You said, did Hamas build even the most rudimentary protections for its people, like concrete bus stops that could double as shelters? No, they did not. Regardless of what form of war would come to Gaza, the Palestinian population would be caught between Israeli and Hamas gunfire without protection. And then you talk about this underground terrarium was not designed to protect anybody but the terrorist group. The intent was clearly to allow the Israelis to bombard the city with abandon, but not expose its fighters to harm or degrade combat capability. They have to be factored. Had to have been factored in from the start that Gaza City above them would be leveled by the Israelis. So be it. Hamas's premise for war both accepted and approved of the fact that civilians would be sacrificed in horrific numbers. It was also an integral part of the war plan to use their dead bodies as a strategic weapon against Israel. And I hate to say
it worked.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that.
All of these protests. But the babies, which apparently was for one side of babies, all right, Palestinian babies. I didn't hear any outrage. I didn't see any protests when Israeli children were killed, right? And they were killed by the hundreds. So, I have to come to a conclusion that these protests, the babies protests, all right, mean that you care only about one group of people, and that is anyone who is not Jewish. And I've called people out that are anti-Semitic. You know what? I'm going to make another prediction, Stephanie, that I made on Twitter this week, because I got into some pretty high-profile fights this week with some very high-profile people, including a Pulitzer Prize winner, who should know better.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to lose their jobs at the end of this. A lot of people's reputations are going to be so horribly damaged, they will be radioactive. Their foundations will lose money. They will never see another donor dime for their support, not for Palestine. Their qualified support or their denunciation of Israel as genocidal, wrong word, colonist, not happened. That was the British that colonialized it and the Ottomans. All right, and apartheidist, which is a little bit true in the West Bank. But these guys are off the chain in what can only be honestly called Jew hatred. And they're unfollowing me left and right on Twitter. Fine by me.
Yeah. And I've also read some of your tweets. You've been pretty even-handed calling out Islamophobia on the other side. You know, I mean, Chris and I have a dumb question. Just because, I don't know. This is what talk radio is for, is talking out your ass about stuff you don't know about. But I just, we were talking about, after 9/11, we attacked Afghanistan, which, killed a lot of innocent Afghani civilians who had nothing to do with 9/11 because they were harboring Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Obviously, Gaza, as you're saying, is harbors Hamas. But, Obama took bin Laden out with one bullet. I to this day don't know why, whether it's just more incompetence on the Bush administration that they let him go at Tora Bora and all that stuff. But I guess we were saying, first of all, because you've talked about the Hamas leaders are sitting on their ass and, Qatar and other places. Why aren't we going, whoever, I don't know, Mossad, Navy SEALs, why aren't we going after them as well? Or are they?
It won't be the SEALs because there will be no book deals after these secret missions. The Israelis have their own forces, all right? Those men are as good as Walking Dead. I was in Abu Dhabi. I was a consultant there. From time to time, the government would ask me questions. And an Israeli team came into Dubai and executed a deputy commander of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Flew in, went to his hotel, shot him in the head, waltzed right out. And the Emiratis were just like, how did they get out of the country? We saw them fly in, we never saw them fly out. I was like, I don't know. But of course I knew how they got in, how they got out. That's going to happen a lot. You're going to see, if you watch
so they are going to go after the leaders as well. Yeah,
that movie, going after the leaders, Munich, where they went after everybody who involved in that. And there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. Those men will not survive this, whether it's a cruise missile that blows up their 5-star hotel in Doha, Qatar, which will create a lot of trouble with the Qataris. But you shouldn't have terrorist group leaders who are saying things like, we need the blood of our women and children spilled so it gives us revolutionary spirit to fight the Jews.
Yeah.
While I go have a drink at the hotel bar.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned the hostages. It's still over 200 hostages. I was trying to think, can you imagine if they had 200 and something American hostages somewhere? I mean, it does. Right? I don't. And then, again, what can they do about that? And what because obviously Israel's saying no ceasefire until they release the hostages, and they're saying no hostages to so we're stuck in that, right? No hostages till there's a ceasefire.
Yeah, Hamas miscalculated with the hostages. Right now, the Israelis, I don't even want to say the words, but they sort of factor them in as good as dead. Yeah. Hamas is not going to allow them to survive if they get cornered. Unless they have been spirited out to the Sinai desert and are under the control of some Hamas people in Egypt that the Egyptians don't know about, they're still there. They're going to get bombed. They're going to be trapped. And it's heartbreaking. It takes a lot. I worked trying to recover hostages in Lebanon in the 1980s. I ran the hostage survival school for, in Coronado, California for our military who could be taken hostage. It's a hard situation. 241, they got to be broken down into 4 and 5 man groups. And that means that there's 20, 30, 40, women who are supporting them who have to cook and provide them, 50 or more guards who have to be with them. It's completely unmanageable.
Yeah.
Is it possible the Israelis can recover some? Yes, it is. Is it possible many could die? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But to stop the eradication of Hamas, which is Israel's priority one, they're not going to stop that.
There it is, my first drink of the day, Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. Many of you know my story. I stopped drinking wine for 3 years during COVID, during the lockdown as part of a health reset. Now I drink wine in moderation, but this is an amazing new product. I've always believed in probiotics. And Z-Biotics, check this out. You drink just one of these. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. I am using this and I feel great in the morning. I don't have to worry if I have an extra glass of wine. I still feel great in the morning. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. I've always had acid reflux problems. It is this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. All I know is it works. It is Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. Go to zbiotics.com/politicalvoices or scan the QR code on the screen right now.